each of the constitution regarding any of the people that are removable by political action, whether the chief executive, whether the speaker, whether a member of the Independent National Electoral Commission or State Independent Electoral Commission, any of these people that can be removed by way of impeachment and then removal. What you need to do is specified in the Constitution, and it says that the referent for counting the numbers is the entire members of that legislative house. So it does not lie in your mouth to say that because only 10 members came to the house and you have formed the quorum, that you are now going to count the 10 for determining how the fraction that is required by the Constitution. So it's important for us to know this. Then for a particular state that has gone ahead, even with 30 members, you have just 10 as the quorum. And you are still going ahead. Even if we use your own interpretation, how can 8 constitute 1/3 of 30? So you don't even have a quorum to start with before you can even proceed with voting. It is worrisome, and I think I like the thesis put forth by Mr. Omokore that perhaps that what they are still doing here is taking account of the delays that we face in our judicial process in coming to a resolution fast enough. Now what the politicians are counting on is to do something, knowing that eventually the courts may throw the thing out, to go ahead and still do it, at least disrupt the political calculations of their opponents. Perhaps this is the only rational conclusion that can be drawn from some of the things that are happening now.
They're still staying with you because we have talked about the process, so mostly defective, mostly loopholes in the process of these impeachments. Now, let's talk about the effect. I mean, if we keep perpetuating illegality in court now, what effect would this ultimately have on our democracy?
Well, my attitude to it is that much of these problems lie in my constituency. That's the judiciary, the lawyers. I mean, the courts are not totally helpless. What the law is, the maximum in law is that any wrong deserves or has a concomitant. If you know that something has been done abusively, there is a provision that says that exemplary damages can be issued when governmental action has been taken with this sort of cynical intention. Yes, let me do it. The damages that will be imposed against me will be less than the benefit I'm going to get by going against the law. So the courts are there to ensure that when they give the damages, people will not do these things in future. And this is what you get in places like in the United States of America. The sort of damages that are imposed against you when you go clearly in breach without any rational basis for doing something, and you go ahead and do it still. The courts, though the windmills of God grind slowly, they grind exceedingly small. And though with patience he stands waiting, with exactness grinds he up. I think that's Tennyson or some poets. You know, but the point in a judicial setting is that the courts are not totally helpless. Until they start imposing these penalties, these things will continue. So recently, there have been penalties. Courts have started, taking account of their powers in terms of costs, awarding costs. The trivial costs that used to be awarded in former times are gradually getting more, in political questions. Now, imposition of costs, even against a lawyer that goes ahead to take the brief of his client in the face of a clear provision of the law that says this is not acceptable. So when you start imposing these costs and start imposing exemplary damages, these things will stop. But there's no punishment. And there's, when there's no punishment, you have impunity. So that's the way it is. Till the judiciary starts taking action. Until we also as citizens start also taking action against our representatives, our politicians, they will not, many of them will not take heed and do that.
All right, Professor Ray Sacherat, thank you very much. A number of points that you have raised. We also have comments. We also have comments coming in from our viewers that have sent in their tweets. The Twitter handle is on the screen at NTA GMN. Let's take this from Arisha Monday. It says, impeachment in Nigeria has become a witch-hunting political tool used against perceived internal political enemies. The Constitution should be amended to restructure the impeachment process to reflect the rule of law.
And one of our regulars, Dele Jack Solomon, says Nigerian democracy is widely believed to have been modeled after America's democracy. But while impeachment is given utmost seriousness in the United States, it is fast becoming a common feature in this climate because of political interests and differences and the interface and influence of the executive on the legislature. Our politicians and political office holders must understand that politics is not a means to acquire massive wealth, but an opportunity to serve the country with little or no financial benefits.
This one is coming from a Twitter handle, Excellency. It says, to me, impeachment is legal in a democratic setting, but in Nigeria, it is now practiced to encourage personal interests. There is need to make amendments because impeachment is often more whenever election is drawing nearer.
And Cecilia Okoroma says, our politicians must be told to think less about themselves and think more about our country, Nigeria, the reason they are elected.
Sani Michael Omakoji, impeachment is not a practice outside democracy. However, the level of force and social engineering involved in its application is a mockery of democracy, and it portends danger for our democracy. Let us shun this idea and move on as a nation.
And Festus Akimboyewa says, the season of impeachment we are seeing in our country shows clearly that majority of our politicians are much more interested in power than democracy. And sadly, they are having their way because of poverty and very low voter education.
This is coming from Mike Ayakwa. Saraki's resignation from the ruling APC is very unfortunate and leaves much to be desired. Is our democracy still nascent? Is our democracy improving? Is our democracy derailing? What is the effect on the common man in terms of dividends?
And Sonny Michael Omakoji says, it is unfortunate that our politics is centered on bitterness, greed, abuse of power, ethnicity, and ignorance. Democracy is a game of numbers, but we say here 8 members of assembly are backed to impeach state governor outside 22 for assembly members. Why are we like this?
Olajide Anthony tweets, times have changed, but the actors are still the same and the scripts are revolving. When will these negative political narratives come to an end? Only when there is reorientation.
And Stephen says politicians moving from one platform to the other are doing so for personal gain and not for the progress of the country.
All right, Sunday Michael Omakoji says defection is the right of any citizen because the party is a platform anyone can use to achieve political ends. If the party I belong to doesn't give me that privilege, I have the right to defect to any party of my choice. Sadly, ours is different. Now, those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation with our guests.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Move now! The red light won't kill you! Move now!
Today, disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I no go dey do am again. Because change begins with me.
Let's cross the other side of the road.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me fast where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and I say good morning, Nigeria. We still have our guests here with us. Of course, we're discussing impeachments and the defections that have taken place. These are issues that we've, of course, have to grapple with at the moment, considering the season that we are in. Just before we get into the big news yesterday, Sheil, which we have reviewed in the papers this morning, is the defection of the Senate President as well as the Governor of Kwara State. Before we get into that, I just want us to deal with this issue and dispense with it very briefly. With regard to impeachment, my question will go to Professor Hahe and then Jide Ojo and then Professor Ray Sachara. We're talking about the role of the judiciary in the impeachment process. Now it is clear from various decisions that the judiciary cannot be ousted. The Supreme Court has decided that, provided, of course, you do not follow the steps, subsections 1 to 9 of Section 188 of the Constitution. But we have also seen a situation where court orders have been issued in the course of an impeachment, and those orders have been disobeyed or disregarded even by the chief judge of a state who is constituting the investigative panel. What does this say?
Absolute impunity. The institutions, the judiciary, the police, the army, and the security agencies, without integrity, no nation can survive. If the judiciary, that is the last hope of the common man, begins to disobey itself and begins to work against the interest of the Constitution, which is the highest law of the land, then there is nothing but anarchy. We have seen here in this country abuse of court processes. We have seen a government and governments, both at the state and at the federal level, willfully disobeying court orders. So unless we return back to the rule of law, we are heading to fascism or total anarchy. And once these things become the process of getting rotten, the decay is not immediately taken care of. It becomes irreversible. And because chaos spreads, we have seen copycats. One state sees something terrible happening. Immediately another says, oh, well, it was done in this state. Why can't we do it in our own state? So impunity begets impunity. It spreads. And before you know it, the whole settlement, the claddings of the system, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, the claddings collapse. The independence of the judiciary is best seen when the judiciary is able to stand up against executive disorder or an executive recklessness. And the executive is best known to stand up for the people when the assembly is unable to impeach it because the people are in support of the president. But as you said, here we have discussed this issue, there has been consistent effects of a Nigerian factor, corruption. The possibility of people winning cases which they shouldn't win, with judges writing 2 judgments depending on the highest bidder, or a legislature that talks about impeachment with one side of the mouth, and quickly the issues about impeachments disappear when the other side of the mouth is buttered. So we can see that corruption is a major factor in the impeachment sagas. They said, let us have some money, we will go and do this and do that and easily impeach him. So that is also a very serious level of corruption to back up an impeachment that is illegal must be seen as one of the most corrupt actions of any group of people, whether they are the executive or they are the legislature or if they are the judiciary.
Thank you, Prof. We'll return to you in a while. Let Jide also talk about the role of the judiciary in all this, the role they're playing now and the role they should be playing in the impeachment saga.
For me, in spite of the perceived corruption in judiciary, it has still been the bastion of democracy in Nigeria, to the best of my knowledge. And I said this very advisedly. Judiciary has discharged itself creditably well, in spite of the few bad eggs amongst its ranks. And it's been doing self-purging. I mean, Nigeria Judicial, the National Judicial Council has routinely been removing or recommending for compulsory retirement or dismissal of some corrupt judges. Because I recall, right from 2000, I mean, look at all the impeachment saga we talked about. From Peter Obi's impeachment to Fayoshe's to Ladoja in Ibadan. And it's the judiciary that still eventually reversed those illegalities. It's just that, like I said earlier on, these politicians knew what they were aiming at. What they were aiming at is not legitimacy or legality of their actions. It's a political action meant, and it's calculated. It's calculated. Okay, look at it. Saraki left yesterday, and you are querying him after he has left to come and answer a query about his defection. Is that not? Is that right? I've ceased to be a member, so why are you querying me to say anti-party activity? I'm already gone. The point is, there will be primaries soon, and with these primaries coming, they just want to make sure that these people are not able to benefit from whatever they have done, whether particularly in terms of decampment or in terms of defection or cross-carpeting, so that by the time they now expel them, before they get another party platform, and that's why you see scenarios where somebody will leave party A today, joins party B, and gets ticket to run. Because what the ROS of all these shenanigans are trying to do is make sure that they frustrate them against 2019. So the next thing is, they know that the court will do justice. It's just that the court process is very slow. And the good thing is, I'm happy with this recent signing on June 8th of the constitutional amendment that now gives timeline for pre-election matters to be discharged. But this is not within the purview of pre-election matters because we are not talking of nomination of candidates yet. Otherwise, this will have benefited. And maybe what we need now is a constitutional court where people can approach and get a quick dispensation of the reversal of this kind of, because if you want to go from High Court to Court of Appeal to Supreme Court to have a final say on this matter, I know for sure you don't have to be a senior advocate to say that this illegality cannot stand the scrutiny of any judicial process. But they still go ahead to commit it, knowing full well that by the time the will of justice eventually rise up, it will be too late for you to benefit from that justice.
All right, Jidojo, thanks a lot. Professor Reza Cherab, on this point, very quickly, before we get again into the defection, court orders being ignored by a chief judge, for instance, restraining him from constituting the investigative panel on the basis of an impeachment notice, because the impeachment notice, ordinarily, there are issues with regard to service, whether by substituted service or personal service, low cost of meeting. If you recall, larger that case, they met at D. Rovans Hotel. In the case of Peter Obi, they left Anambra State and went to Asaba. So, but judges, chief judges, as it were, disregarding lawful injunctions issued by their own courts.
Sometimes the problem is really a question of theory deficit in the operators of the system. You know, first of all, a chief judge acting under this provision is not acting as a court. It's not acting as a high court. It's acting as an administrative tribunal. So he is subject to the supervisory jurisdiction of a court and all the consequences that follow that, including committal for contempt, including discipline by the NJC. And this sort of thing has a rather dramatic response was made by the NJC in the Mike Balon's case in 2000, late in December 2006. And the judgment eventually of the Court of Appeal vindicated that in February of 2007. And the thing that happened there was rather dramatic. I was a bit critical of it in a paper I submitted to the University Osgood Hall Law Faculty of York University, Canada in 2007 about what the CJN did. But it was effective. The then CJN, Belgore CJN, came out on national TV when the late Chief Judge of Anambra State, CJ Okoli, CJ, did what he did that was considered a collusion with the forces that impeached Obi the second time. What he did was, Uriezedi J was hearing the case and had adjourned for judgment. And on the eve of the judgment, the CJ, the chief judge of the state, did what was legally allowed to its chief judge. He transferred the case from Uriezedi J to another, Uriezedi J to another jurisdiction, and therefore left the case that was due for judgment to another person. Part of delaying and part of obstructing the smooth administration of justice. Now, the NJC was very responsive. Within 2 or 3 days, they had already met, and the CJN came on national TV, this was unprecedented, and announced the suspension of the chief judge of Anambra State, therefore saying that he had no powers to exercise any other powers of obstruction. And Uriezedi J therefore went ahead and read his judgment and confirmed that what was done by the legislature was wrong and contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. So what we're saying here is that there are also internal remedies. When the judiciary errs, it is also the judiciary that usually stops and corrects the judiciary. And there is also a special executive body. Mind you, NJC is not a judicial body. It's an executive body. There's a special executive body, but that consists mostly of judicial people that also can stand in for administrative actions and put the judges, when they are exercising administrative responsibilities, call them to order. So what I'm saying is that should now be fully mindful of their decisions, realize that when the CJ is exercising the power of constituting a panel, he is not acting as a court, he's acting in his administrative executive capacity. And therefore, he is subjected to the supervisory jurisdiction of a high court, including the most junior judge in his judiciary. The judge that was appointed yesterday.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. We'll return to you shortly, but we need to go back to this issue of defections, the latest ones that occurred yesterday. What are the implications of the Senate President's defection from the APC to the PDP? And then, would he still remain the Senate President? Let's talk to that.
Well, I understand from the Constitution that it is possible to defect from your party first. Everybody's allowed to join a party. You cannot contest on the basis of independence in this country. The Senate President was elected on the basis of the APC. And somewhere along the line, APC has a problem. There's a new APC. So on the basis that your party has a problem and is split into splinter, you are allowed by law to move to another party without consequence, as we have seen in the past. So I think the Senate President is using that window to defect. But in principle, integrity requires that if he does not belong to this party and does not respect the party, then he could have also left as Senate President. Again, you can question that and say, now that more members of the Senate have now, the APC becomes a minority party. So if he is a Senate President on the basis of election into that position by senators, then no other power has the right to remove him except his conscience and the majority of members of the Senate. So in this case, there cannot be any other pressure. The APC telling him to resign is a moot situation, and it is merely playing politics, just like the very beginning. The APC did not want him to be the Senate President, and he has a lot of grievances he can throw at them. You didn't want me to be Senate President in the first place. I became Senate President, and you hounded and persecuted me and challenged me, made me a thief. Then you charged me as an armed robber. And the police actually treated him like a common criminal. Many times he was sent to court, and he was docked, and he was treated with so much disrespect that other people wondered why he remained in that party for so long. So it is clear that when he had the window of a new APC, that window gives him the right to defect from APC, and he cannot be found guilty by any competent law according to our lay interpretation. It is subject to reasonableness for us to expect that they will not pursue him further. But if they pursue him in the next 5 months, he wins his election and comes back with a majority of senators, we are simply creating enemies where we shouldn't. We are simply creating tension and heating up the polity, where all it is about pursuit of power, and pursuit of power which is transient. We've seen that life itself is nothing. Let's build this country. Let's stop running to take positions and fight each other for temporary positions and money, when we can all come together and slowly, one block after the other, build a greater Nigeria.
All right, Professor Ahi, thanks a lot. Joe.
Yeah, Section 50 is very clear. Section 50 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, did not say that if you defect from a majority party to a minority party, as it were, or that you have to be a majority party to constitute the leadership. Of course, the position of majority leader is there. But for the Senate President and Deputy Senate President, you don't have to belong to the majority party in the parliament. So Section 50, subsection 2, has made it very abundantly clear that you need 2/3 majority to remove a Senate President or Deputy Senate President. Wherein they cannot get that, they have to live with it, that even though they may still be perceived as party minority, in which case, if you go by the interpretation of Senate leader last week that says that they have 53, now the odds have changed, because even the 53 they were counting, they didn't take cognizance of Saraki now as show up. So the balance is maybe by the time they reconstitute the parliament, we will know which party actually have the majority. But from my own understanding of Section 50, subsection 1 and 2, particularly subsection 2C, you can only remove him based on 2/3 majority of the Senate.
Joe, thanks a lot. And Professor Ray Sachara, from our Enugu Network Studios. Now, let me say there's no need for a preface. I know that you would like to give a preface. The question that my colleague asked earlier is Senator Saraki's continuation as Senate President untenable on account of his defection now from the ruling APC to the opposition PDP?
First answer to that is yes. The applicable provision is Section 68, subsection 1G, and it provides that if a person sponsored by a political party leaves that party before the end of tenure of the House, he automatically should cease to be a member of that House. And then, when you then go back to Section 50, subsection 2A, not 2C that was quoted, but 2A, says that a Senate President or Deputy Senate President will vacate his office automatically if he ceases to be a member of the House. So, if he's no longer a member of the Senate, based on Section 68, subsection 1G, then it means that he cannot continue to be a member of the Senate. And if he's not a member of the Senate, he cannot be a Senate President. That is the...
There are always so many arguments sides to an argument. Thank you very much. Professor Ray Sachara, constitutional lawyer. He joined us from our Enugu studios. Thank you very much. And we'll also like to thank our guests in the studio with us. And Professor Yose Aye joined us here, former president, African Leadership Institute, a former senator, a former minister, and former ambassador. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us. And Jide Ojo, regular also, a public affairs analyst. We appreciate your thoughts always, Jide. Thank you very much. And time now to take sports on Good Morning Nigeria.
Nigeria's Arnold Quadri has been